Hi, and welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Michael Crossan.
And I'm Maddie McCarty.
Say, Maddie McCarty? Welcome to Talking Cars,
Thank
Maddie
you.
McCarty. And while Maddie is new to Talking Cars, she is not new to CR, and she is a super welcome addition to our team. But Maddie, for our viewers and listeners, tell us about Maddie.
Thank you for the warm welcome.
Yep.
So I am an automotive engineer here at Consumer Reports. And so what I do is I do the usability testing here and the ADAS testing. So I go into the cars and I look at the controls and the displays and I see how easy or difficult they are to use.
Yeah.
And then for the ADAS, which is Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, what I do is I go in the cars again and I take them out on the road or on our track and I test to see how the performance is of how well the car can do lane centering or adaptive cruise control, different safety features or convenience features like that.
And it is interesting to me because your background is human factors, right? We've talked about that and how cars now need this expertise to really get the holistic picture of how they perform and operate and what consumers are going to interact with. We need someone like Maddie on the team. And you'll hear some of, Maddie works very closely with Kelly, a lot of what they talk about. And if you guys get mad at us for talking about controls, we can now blame Maddie because it's all
We
her
can,
fault.
yes.
No, but again, she brings the scientific part to us saying, oh my gosh, I can't find this thing and all of that. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And
Thank you.
This vehicle has some things for Maddie to talk about.
Yes, it does.
Sure.
It'll be fun to get into.
Yeah. So for this episode, we are giving our first impressions of the 2024 Honda Prologue, all-electric. First all-electric vehicle for Honda. Just a few things. First electric vehicle, a modified infotainment system. Prices for the Prologue range from $47,400 for the base EX trim with front-wheel drive to $57,900 for the all-wheel drive Elite. The Elite is only all-wheel drive. $455 we paid for Pacific Blue paint, and a $1,395 destination charge brought our Prologue Touring, the mid-trim, to $56,550. Not an inexpensive vehicle. And one of the good things is the Prologue does qualify for the full $7,500 EV tax incentive because its final assembly takes place in Mexico. Now, Mike, Honda kind of took a bit of a fast track.
They did.
To get this EV to market, and we'll let you share kind of what that fast track was.
So Honda made a phone call to GM and said, hey, we want to use the Blazer, but we want to make it a Honda. And GM was like, sure, absolutely, we can do that. So my understanding is Honda designed all the exterior sheet metal, all the styling, that kind of stuff. I mean, it looks like a Honda. You put it next to Hondas and you're like, yep, that's a Honda. But it is the Chevy Blazer underneath. The GM Ultium platform.
The Chevy Blazer EV.
Yeah, correct.
Underneath.
The EV, correct. Yes, exactly. And it is that Ultium platform, which is also on the Lyriq and some other GM vehicles as well. But it was basically almost a turnkey situation for Honda. They just had to style a vehicle. We'll get into what they did on the interior because they did do some differences and changes there. But they sort of just borrowed the Blazer.
Yeah. And so got the EV-ishness from Chevrolet.
Correct.
From the Blazer, but Honda-fied it. So EPA-rated driving range of 296 miles, so certainly competitive in terms of range for front-wheel drive. 273 to 281 for all-wheel drive versions. The Elite is a little lesser at the 273. All are spec'd as 35 minutes of DC fast charging times for that 20 to 80%.
We'll talk about that.
Charge window, and a rate of 62 to 65 miles per 10 minutes. So interesting charging stories. So you have a couple. And
I do.
And we did do what we've been doing is a highway range test. You had an interesting story from that.
Yes.
Which I do think is very important for Prologue and Blazer owners to know. So
absolutely.
Fill us in on that.
So we have done the EV range test on the Prologue, the Blazer EV, and the Lyriq.
Right.
So we've completed all those.
All the Ultium vehicles.
Correct. And all the results we'll publish sort of soon on that. We have a couple more vehicles to test. But what we found on all three vehicles, we run them all the way to zero until they coast and they shut off and they don't do anything else. And typically we can recover a car in 10 to 15 minutes.
And by recover,
to put enough charge in it to get the car to move, to get it to a charger, basically. and we don't have to go that far. We kind of plan out how we do this, so we sort of know where we're going to kind of run these things out. And sometimes we have to charge off of a vehicle we have, whether it's a hybrid pickup truck that has a 240 plug or an electric truck that has a 240 plug. It's kind of like having just a big mobile battery and makes it easy. But mostly 10 to 15 minutes is all we need to charge a car for before it will move again. All three of these vehicles took hours until they would move. The Prologue and the Lyric moved at about 12% SOC, where most cars move at still 0 or maybe 1 is all you have to put back in it. And then the Blazer did not move until 22% state of charge.
22%?
It took hours, to get to that point. So it's the kind of thing where, I mean, you don't want to run out any EV of charge. I mean, but it happens. But in a lot of cases, you can get towed to a charger, or a roadside can maybe come along with a generator, or they have mobile batteries and stuff like that. But I mean, this took hours.
And you
would be on the side of the road for a long time. Or if you were charging off of a 110 plug, was all you could get to, it'd be probably double the amount of time. So definitely heed the warnings that the car gives you and plan your routes in these things, because you do not want to run one out.
And just on that, when you deplete completely, the charge rate, I mean, I talked about this 65 miles in 10 minutes. That's not the rate when you're that far depleted.
Yes.
It's slower.
Yeah, that 65 miles in the 10 or so minutes, that's kind of like the sweet spot in the middle when all conditions are ideal.
Right.
And in this case, it is a whole lot slower. We were charging off of actually a pickup truck that had a 240 plug in it. So we're not even quite at the same rate that we would have off of just our level 2 chargers, here at our facility. Right. So that's a little bit slower too. But I mean, this took a long time that we were not expecting. It's the first time we've run into it.
It's funny. I think we had, again, I'm dating myself as I often do, but diesels, remember they used to say you can't run a diesel out of fuel because it involved this repriming of all the
kind of a nightmare
fuel system. And it was like, it's like an old diesel, but it's a new EV. So yes, I don't think go that far in any EV, but
I would not recommend running them out. Any EV, but particularly these. It's going to ruin the rest of your day.
One other thing you talked about in the charging, and you covered it at the auto show, was the access to the charging.
Yes. So I did sort of an early look at the Prologue at the New York Auto Show this year. And one of the things I found was the charging door, at least on the surface, appears to be better than that of the Blazer and the Lyric. It's just a pretty traditional kind of flap. Where the Blazer and the Lyric has this whole motorized contraption that's kind of slow and in my mind is going to break.
Very slow, and ice is over and is impossible to close when ice is over. Speaking from maybe personal experience.
So I was excited, and I was like, oh, hey, look, they fixed the charge port, which was maybe one of the worst things about those two GM vehicles. Well, ours still has that problem, but we actually had in the check-in process, there was a little slip on the assembly line or at like port or something. There was actually a work order on the vehicle to fix the charging port, and that was still left in the glove box of the car.
Maybe ours didn't get that attention.
I think they did something, but it's still not great. So I thought it was better, maybe better, but not really.
Okay, so something to be wary of. A couple things to be wary of on the Prologue. Comparing the Prologue back to the Honda lineup, we did note that the closest is probably the Honda Passport SUV, but the Prologue is 122 inches versus 111 in the Passport, so 11 inches longer, but it's 7 inches lower and 1 inch narrower, kind of a more sleek look, which you certainly see. Let's start with you, Maddie. Inside, how does it accommodate seat comfort, access, visibility, all of that comes with that?
I had no issue with getting in and out of the car.
It's got a good height.
I took it on a road trip for about like a total of 4.5 hours of driving.
So a lot of seat time.
Yeah, a lot of seat time, and I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. I tend to have my seat a little bit higher up when I drive and closer to the steering wheel than I think a lot of people do. And I found it to be comfortable, and I was able to find an easy driving position. The only thing I would say is that the screen in the instrument cluster is a little bit rectangular with, when you try to see through the steering wheel, the edges get cut off. So that's the only thing where it's like I couldn't adjust it that way to see everything on the screen. But in terms of like sitting down and not getting like tired, like physically, or getting back pain, that was fine.
Or having to adjust all the time.
I didn't notice.
Good test.
Yes, 4 hours is a good test. I didn't notice that I was.
That's great.
So it's fine.
Mike, you're a little taller.
Yeah, I road tripped it as well. Mike Quincy and I went to the other side of Rhode Island to purchase a car, and I found it to be good. Access was good. The car does look sort of a little squished and squatty, but there's plenty of headroom in it. So no real issue there. I did find the seat, while not uncomfortable, it just sort of lacked a lot of contouring. It was just kind of like a bench, was kind of how I related it. But a comfortable bench, I guess.
So I was just going to say, it's flat, but for some reason, it works.
It's okay.
It's okay, like Maddie said. I didn't find myself, and I also had it on, not as long, I don't think, as either of you, but I did do a good long road trip with it, and I was fine. So whatever the cushion lengths, angles, cushion stiffness, it's good. It's good, even though it's flat. One thing I found, and it's in the Blazer too, but is when you get in, the dash, I swear it's like 3 feet out in front of you. The rake angle of the windshield comes down, but it creates this, for me, forward visibility is so good. If you lose your Easy Pass down on the dash, you're going to be in trouble.
That happened to me. I had to have my passenger reach
up
over
and-
every time and just make sure it was centered.
I also think it will be hard to clean that windshield from the
Probably,
interior.
yes.
You're going to need one with one of the poles. But from a visibility standpoint, I thought it was great. And then you start to feel the squatty as the belt lines start backwards and they're not as good. Like it's too high to kind of
Correct.
comfortably rest your elbow on the door trim. But from a forward, I was like, oh, I really like this. Okay, Maddie.
Yes.
Controls and interfaces
All right.
and the Prologue. Again, I don't want to completely go back to the Blazer, but we had some real frustrations with the Blazer.
Yes, I think it's important to go back to the Blazer because it is the system that GM produced and then Honda kind of put their own touches to. So you're going to have the same issues of the system actually being difficult to navigate through. It's a little bit confusing. So what they did was they took the menu structure and then they put Honda coloring and they put Honda icons. And so it looks actually nicer and cleaner and less visually overwhelming because the Blazer is, I think, 17.7 inches. And then the Prologue is going to be 11.3. So it's a lot smaller. So that means that you don't have all of these like shortcuts and buttons that line everything around.
Small shortcuts and buttons.
Small shortcuts and buttons.
Yep.
And also it just gives it a cleaner look with the icons they chose. And then the gray background with the white icons make it much easier to see than the thin lines against the dark blue background that the Blazer has. And so even though they have very similar content, it just looks cleaner overall in the Prologue.
The start-stop button, which we struggled with in the EV or in the Blazer, not here.
Yes.
It is a hard
We have
start-stop.
a real hard start-stop button, which is great because in the Blazer, you could just press the brake to turn it on, which is easy.
Yeah.
But then to turn off the car, there's a little button in the touchscreen itself. Again, one of many, many buttons that you can tap. Or you can leave the car and then hope that it turns off.
Right.
So it's just easier when you have that button.
Right. It just feels like, to me, that confidence of, okay, it's off, and I know it's off.
Yes.
One big addition from the Honda side was wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto.
Yes.
Recall the Blazer had moved to a Google platform and did not have those two options, which I think most people are accustomed to and want. So that is in the Prologue.
Yes, that is true. And that is something that I know people here at the test track missed having in the Blazer. So it's nice to have it in the Prologue.
Yes. One of the little things that I've been now seeing, kind of a little trend, of course, from the headlight perspective, which I do, is, so many of these things you can set in the menus. And we like that. We like the ability to tailor, but auto high beams now you can shut off, which is fine. And I totally get the instances where you would maybe want like stop and go traffic where it's just blinking on and off. You would want to shut them off. My gripe, I think CR's gripe, is with the next ignition cycle, they don't come back on. So once you've shut them off for a scenario where you might want them off, they don't come back on. And I really see them as a safety benefit for nighttime driving. And I want you to turn them back on.
Absolutely.
In the next menu cycle. And that was the same in the Blazer.
And it's not easy to turn them back on because it's hard to find that menu. Right. So they're making it even more difficult, it seems like.
The Blazer EV's screen is very stylized. The whole dashboard is very stylized. And if there's one thing I know, it's style, obviously.
Right.
No, that's ridiculous. I don't know anything about style. But It's
we
very
say.
pretty when you look at that screen. The dark blue background, there's like some gradient, there's some texture going on. But like you said, that makes it difficult to deal with these small icons and things like that. And Honda just simplified it across the board.
And bigger. The selections are bigger and easier for me.
And because it tells you, it gives you that tile, that edge. Whereas in the Blazer, you're kind of just like, well, I hope if I tap this, it's going to work.
So so some definite differences. Mostly, I feel like improvements. I will tell you, if I didn't know it was the similar platform, I would not have known, other than maybe the long dash, that it was a sister, a twin, a sibling of the Blazer EV.
Yeah, I think some of the HVAC buttons maybe give it away, the window switches and things like that.
You're right there. Yep.
And for me, the wiper stalk location, it is not in the proper place for a Honda.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if longtime Honda owners, that'll be a problem for them.
Yep.
Yeah, the wiper stalk is actually on the left side where we're used to, Honda owners are maybe used to having the headlights. And the headlights have been put in the touchscreen.
Correct.
So that is something that might trip people up, especially with that shifter too, being on the right side.
If you're coming from a Honda to this Honda,
Yeah, exactly. And so that's something that might confuse people. It's easy once you get used to the
just takes a little
movement, but yeah.
Power delivery. Now we're talking about the EV-ishness, the power and the ride, which we'll talk about, but power delivery, Mike.
I mean, this is another thing that they borrowed from the Blazer EV because it's basically the Blazer EV underneath. It has enough power. It's not overwhelming. It's 288. It's sort of almost nice and refreshing to have an EV that just doesn't make you sick or your passenger sick or accelerate like crazy. I mean, while that's fun, it's usable power.
So smooth, I thought,
Yeah, so very easy to drive. And I think the ride quality of it is better than the Blazer. You have more sidewall the tire. It absorbs some of the bigger bumps, the harsher bumps. They don't just make it into the cabin as much. And it was great. I did a bunch of miles with Mike Quincy on the highway, and then I sat in traffic basically coming back, and at slow speed, all the undulations and the potholes and stuff. It did great, with both.
I thought so too. I thought it rode and delivered power super smoothly, Maddie.
Yeah. Driving in here, we have a bunch of potholes, and I always like to test it out there. And I was like, wow, this is actually very quiet, very smooth. I like it a lot.
Now, Mike talked about motion sickness, which for me and is often an element of the regenerative braking. If there's too much or it's not adaptable, there is absolutely a easy coast with this car. It does not have it. I suspect I had it on the minimum setting, which is where I kind of like it. I like to drive it as if it's not an EV. But one of the things, Maddie, is the kind of where the regen set. It was a little bit different in the Prologue.
Yes. So there's two different ways to do regen. The one that you're referring to is this little switch that's behind the steering wheel, right above some media buttons. And so since they're all very close together, it's hard to be really precise. And so there have been times where I've accidentally changed the music when I was trying to do the regen or vice versa. And it's such a small little paddle, but you have to be very precise on where you place it, even within that button, because the top part is a little flimsy. So you want to make sure you get the base. So it's just a little bit too small.
Finicky?
Finicky.
Is that the right word?
That's what I would say.
And a little bit of, like I say, maybe just finicky and an odd implementation for regen. But you also alluded to noise. I thought this was super quiet. You talked maybe about some wind.
I did. So I say it's quiet in terms of like the ride and like hearing the road noise.
Yep.
But I did hear like wind noise coming over like the windshield and the A-pillars. But it wasn't enough that I was annoyed by it. I just noticed it. So
some sing-songy EV noises.
Yeah, a little bit of drivetrain noise.
At slow speeds, but
and not terrible. And don't mind it. It's not like an odd manufactured noise. It just seems to be the noise of the motor, which I'm always okay with. But there actually is an odd noise in this car.
Yes, there is.
And I don't know who the first.
Do an imitation.
No, I can't. It's like an air moving noise, sort of asthmatic, wheezy, unpleasant. And I think it's from the climate system.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a problem.
Yeah.
It needs to go in for that. I don't know if it's a seal around a blend door or something like that, but there's some air getting past something. and that might contribute, to wind noise and just noise in general going down the highway. A
But
little
we think
unpleasant.
it might be a sample of our vehicle.
Correct.
We're hoping.
Yeah.
Lord help the Prologues if they all have that. I said it sounded like a 1980s dial-up modem.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Or a balloon that you squeeze the end. And it's, yeah, like air escaping.
Yeah.
It kind of makes it seem like definitely there's something wrong with it, but I would expect that from an old car, like, your grandma's car. You turn it on, crank the AC, and it's screaming at you. But it goes away eventually.
It does. And it's intermittent.
Comes back. Yeah, it comes
Yep.
back.
I do think it's climate because the more on these, we've had some really warm days, and the more I think we had automatic climate helping us with the AC and things, the more it seemed to happen. Mm-hmm. So who knows? Safety features.
Safety features.
Yeah, lots of
What
them.
would you like to know?
I would like to know what is standard, and I'll talk through it, but go ahead.
All right. The Prologue comes well equipped with a host of active safety and driver assistance features. So it has automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, automatic emergency braking that operates at highway speeds, blind spot warning, rear cross traffic warning, reverse automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, and adaptive cruise control. So you get quite a few different safety features there as standard.
But it also does some things a little bit differently, Maddie, and it's certainly a little bit different than the Blazer.
Sure. So the Prologue does not come with GM's Super Cruise that controls the lane centering and adaptive cruise control on the highways, on pre-mapped highways.
Right.
And so Acura is going to be offering Honda Acura's version of Super Cruise, which they are calling Acura Watch 360 Plus.
Yeah.
A terrible name.
You know what that is, Mike, just by the name. Yeah. But anyway.
Exactly. It tells you. So that is going to be coming out on the 2024 Acura ZDX Type S.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are interested in having the Super Cruise version, Honda Super Cruise version, then you're going to have to go with that and not this Prologue. But the Prologue does offer adaptive cruise control and, like we said, a lot of different safety features, and very similar to the Blazer, as we keep coming back to, because it is going to be like the same type of features. And just having driven the Prologue and the Blazer around for several hundred miles, they perform very similarly.
Yeah.
But they do vary a bit because the body of the vehicles differ, this placement of the sensors are going to differ, and that's going to affect the performance of these safety systems.
Yeah. And we like the Super Cruise, just for everybody who's not familiar, we like that confirmation of driver engagement
Absolutely.
in that Super Cruise brings. So, yeah.
And so I have a question. The GM has always done the seat vibration
Yes.
for alert, and Honda has not done that, at least what I noticed when I drove it. And we even had a conversation. I thought it did, but it does not. So
No, so for lane departure warning in Chevy vehicles or GM, it will vibrate the seat as the part of the warning, but in the Honda, it only uses an audible alert and a visual alert, because I believe that seat vibration is patented. So Honda's going to have to come up with something else. They have historically used a steering wheel vibration, which we've kind of described as a shudder.
Yeah.
That's a little alarming. But yeah, they're going to have to get more creative and when they do their alerts.
Quick poll. Seat vibration or audible alert? Go.
I think I like the seat vibration.
Me too.
Seat vibration. I don't want to alert the entire cabin every
with you on that.
time because sometimes it's intentional.
Yes.
You know?
And sometimes secondary roads, which we've taught, you're over that line a lot.
Yes.
So-
or like even just random covered up road markings or construction goes off. It gets really annoying. So I don't want to
GM,
turn.
if it's patented. They
Got it.
Yep.
I don't want to turn the system off. I just want it to be more pleasant, I guess. Less annoying.
I do want to say that I do think this is a Honda thing, that the ADAS warnings and the auto brakes, for me, I had a couple of false alerts.
Oh, yes.
Backing up in my flat driveway, there were vehicles in the periphery, but not behind me, and I got the dead stop in your driveway, and I got multiple forward collision warning alerts. Totally fine. No, what I considered complete control, no imminent crash. And I do think we have said Honda's systems are a bit more aggressive and false alerts,
Yeah, but I would say like,
prone to fast alerts.
yes, definitely prone to a lot of false alerts. I had a couple of instances of rear AB just like coming out of the garage, actually. And it's very startling.
Yes, it is.
And then you kind of learn to anticipate it in the same spots. I'm sure you have learned to anticipate it, but
I haven't quite figured out what it's seeing. Like I say, I feel like my garage and the cars are far enough away, but it's seeing a shadow or something in my driveway that it's reacting to. Yep. You get that?
In a lot of Hondas, I get the forward brake warning, and I would say most of them are unwarranted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, it's a little close, but and it's just a warning. I haven't had it actually engage for forward, but I have had.
I have.
Well, but I have had it in reverse.
Yeah.
I move cars in the shop quite a bit, and backing up towards walls, and someone's moved a stool or something, and that is a startling one because like I can see it in the mirror, I can see it in the screen. I know I'm not going to hit the thing, but the car decides to stop itself. And like I just need to go a little bit further to make some room, but it just kind of doesn't let you.
Keeps doing it too. It'll be repeated activation, which is...
There seems to me for those, like you should be able to say, okay, I got this. I'm going to hit this, whatever. Or I know it's there. Yeah.
You can change that in the settings and it will turn back on the next time, but you'd have to dig around.
Yeah. Unlike the auto high beams, which don't turn.
Yeah, exactly.
So... Of course, we will be doing all of our 50 tests, including we did highway range already on the Honda Prologue. But before we close, just to give listeners and viewers, if there were a back-to-back Honda Prologue, Chevrolet Blazer EV, which would you choose, Maddie? And why? What's the main thing?
Well, immediately my gut says the Prologue.
Yep.
I had a great experience in it. I even took it fast charging, and I know I had a good experience, and I heard that you had maybe not so good of an experience, but from my experience, it was fine. So I just enjoyed the ride. It didn't feel like a luxury vehicle at all. It felt like it was a solid interior, and it drove well, and I didn't have any issues with it. But the Blazer, I've had some issues with.
You are right where I am. Wonderful driving experience without the frustration, without the issues.
Yes.
I would pick the Prologue all day long. Mike?
So the Prologue is probably a better vehicle in terms of experience and the way things are set up and the screens and everything we've talked about. I did have some charging issues with it. It was a very hot day. We started off at 125. The car is capable of charging at 150. But it dropped off from there and it settled in like the upper 40s, and it took a long time to charge.
Yeah.
So I could get back here. We intentionally, Mike Quincy and I intentionally left at about 50% charge to kind of see if we could make it to our destination, which was almost out by Cape Cod. And then he got in the car that we bought. He drove back, and I had to stay at a mall and charge and wander around and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It didn't really hurt my opinion of it because I get there's other factors to it. But it did happen. If I was buying one, I'd buy the Blazer, even though it's worse, because
Well, it may score worse, to your point, but
yeah, but I mean, like in functionality is worse. The screen is worse. It doesn't have the stop-start button, all that stuff. But I think, and this is sort of unwarranted yet. We haven't proven this, but it is a GM vehicle underneath.
Yep.
And I'm just worried about you're taking the Honda to Honda, and they're going to have to use like GM systems that they don't have necessarily like all set up and ready to go, and parts availability and all that kind of stuff. So just thinking down the road, I would feel a little more comfortable having the Chevrolet just because it goes to Chevy and they do their thing.
Speaking from the real mechanic
And-
technician,
that's not my
that has
background.
to work
Honda
on it.
Link and OnStar, and we're actually dealing with this right now. Honda Link is Honda's connected services, OnStar is the GM stuff. But they're merging the two, so it's Honda Link connected by OnStar is what they call it. I've watched
Just call
video.
it Honda Star.
They should. I've watched videos. It's not super clear how to make it happen. We thought we had it all set up, but you go in the Honda Link app, which is where you access the car, and the car is there, but there's no details. You can't look at battery, you can't look at charging, you can't turn the climate on. And we called Honda Link, the customer service number, as you do through the app, and after like an hour, they're like, yeah, you have to call OnStar. Sorry. So
again, to your
we ran
point.
out of time yesterday. We're going to do that later today. So again, those are like the little frustrating things that might just crop up in ownership of the vehicle. So I think for that reason, I might get the Chevrolet.
Not mature backup, maybe.
Yeah.
For the
That makes me curious. So in like 2 years or so, would you change your answer, do you think, if everything else stayed the
It's
same?
possible, yeah. I mean, I do think the Prologue is a better experience. It's a better ride.
Yep.
The screen is much better, simpler to use. I don't know how many Prologues they're going to sell, but I always then go back to just parts availability, or if you get a fender bender, bumper covers and headlights might become tough to get down the road in 5, 6, 8, 10 years, whatever it is. course, I don't know how many Blazers they're selling either,
Right.
especially with kind of the rollout issue that they had on the Blazer, and we experienced in our Blazer too. So I would proceed with caution on either of them. They both have some really nice points about them, nice things about them. If it was my first EV, I don't know that I would choose. There might be some better EVs out there.
Yep.
I might choose something else in general.
To me too, it also blurs that, what is an American car? This is just one of them. That's a complete blur of, a lot of it's made in North America. So, well, stay tuned. Stay tuned for full test results on the Prologue. Okay, so we're going to move on to our audience questions, but a big change here. So listen up. We now have, if you're looking for resources for talking cars, kind of a one-stop shopping in that there's a link, consumerreports.org/talking cars or cr.org/talking cars. Not only can you see all of the old episodes in one place, but it also is the new hub for where we want you to submit your questions. Still the same avenues. You can text, you can video, you can email, but go through that cr.org/talking cars to find everything talking cars on one hub. We love it, love it. So first question comes from Steve. Now that Fisker has filed for bankruptcy, will CR continue with its evaluation and road test report of the Fisker Ocean? Mike?
Yes. The answer is yes. We are, and it is underway. It is, I don't want to say it's almost complete, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
And just a few more kind of the big tests to go, and then sort of everybody gets together and shares all their information. But we are going to finish it, and the reason is, A, we have it, but there's things to learn. These vehicles do exist. There's more of them. They're in bankruptcy, but they're not out of business. They haven't gone away.
Right.
And they're making deals or selling them off. These cars exist, and they'll be out in the world. So it's worthwhile testing. There's things to learn. There are some interesting, sort of some good points about the vehicle. And some of its performance stuff seems to be impressive off of kind of what I've seen off some numbers.
Great, yeah.
But, I still don't know if I would recommend anyone buy one.
Yep.
But we are going to test it, so that information is there. It's historical. And, there's always things to learn.
Yep. And they're going to be used Fisker Oceans.
Yes, absolutely.
So that data that you're collecting right now will serve the used car market.
Yeah, and once its price kind of stabilizes and the market sort of demands whatever its price is, it might become, I'll say, a better deal.
Right.
Versus the $70,000, that they were asking for on the launch edition.
Great answer. The second question comes from Jim in Arizona. I own a 2016 Audi Q5. Love the performance, ride, build quality, etc. What it doesn't have is up-to-date safety features like automatic braking, lane keeping assist, etc. It now has 75,000 miles on it, and I want to upgrade. What SUV would you suggest in a late model used car would give me similar performance with all the latest safety systems? Jim adds, I'm also 6'3" and 240 pounds, so the car's got to accommodate that. Thanks for all your work. I am and will continue to be a passionate supporter. Thank you so much, Jim. So, Maddie, what was your suggestion for Jim for a new used car?
All right, so I want to preface this by explaining my thought process here.
Absolutely.
I do not know powertrain very well, so I was focusing on the safety systems and the size of the vehicle. So I came up with the BMW X3, the 2024. It has a very similar body style, and I wanted to accommodate the 6'3", 240-pound frame. So we have very similar headroom, a little bit more headroom than the Q5. With 5.5 inches versus the 5 inches, more leg room, and then same shoulder room. So hopefully, if you like the Audi Q5, you'll like the X3. But then I was looking at the active safety features. So the X3 comes standard with BMW's active driving assistant, which comes with AEB with pedestrian detection, lane departure warning, blind spot warning, and rear cross traffic warning. So a lot of those features are going to really help with the actual making sure that your vehicle, if it starts to drift, it's going to push you, or it's going to at least alert you that you're starting to come out of the lane. You got blind spot, which most people love, and then rear cross traffic warning. If you're starting to back up in a car or a person walks by, it's going to alert you. But there's no interventions with those except for the AEB. So then I was thinking, all right, so what can we do if he wants some interventions to help with the safety? So he can add the premium package for features like adaptive cruise control, lane centering, and lane keeping
There you go.
And then because BMW, I know this is going on, but I was really interested in this question. If he wants to do anything more with lane centering, BMW actually has driver assistance professional package, which allows for hands-free driving on certain pre-mapped highways. So it's, for me, I like using this. I think it's a great feature to have in a BMW, and it does it very well.
Yes.
So that is my suggestion.
I also think, he's coming out of an Audi. He likes maybe the German feel, so maybe the X3. Mike.
So, interestingly, the Audi Q5 is a bit of an odd size.
Yes.
It's a little bit bigger than the X3. It's smaller than the X5. It's bigger than the GLC. It's smaller than the GLE.
I love
It's kind of just in between.
Yeah.
But I think, and I think Jim might even be looking at wanting to go pre-owned a little bit, like a new leap, or, like maybe an off-lease kind of situation. So looking at that, I sort of thought to myself, that's probably in the $35,000 to $38,000 range. I would look at the current model, and so they're only about a year and a half old, Honda Pilot. It's bigger, but it's going to have a lot more modern features and conveniences. The thing drives great. Jim's a little bit taller than I am, but I fit really well in it, and I don't think Jim would have any trouble being 6'3". It's just a really good vehicle, and honestly, Jim, you're not going to have some of the maintenance issues and the maintenance costs you would have on that Q5 as well. So I think just overall, it's going to be a much better experience than you've maybe been having as of late in that Q5. Not to say that you're having trouble. You didn't mention that, but I think it is a really nice choice. I probably would step up to the touring trim, because you're coming out of the German car, the Audi. You're going to want to add some features and some tech and some sort of niceties, some of the better finishes. So I would pick a touring trim Honda Pilot.
It's so funny because both of what you said are literally written in my notes right now. One, I had the X3.
Oh, nice.
So first, and I said, if you were going just by the data, it's the X3. And what I did say for used, certified pre-owned or used, 2020 and later, because that's when the reliability of the X3 got good. But to all the points you made. But then I was on a similar page as you. Why not go not luxury brand, but top trim, which we say all the time. And in that case, I said RAV4 Prime, Toyota RAV4 Prime. You can get pretty much any year because the reliability is bulletproof. It has great tall person scores, like you were pulling out, for visibility, driving position, seat comfort. We've said many times we have a range of testers. We can actually see the individual scores for tall, medium, and short drivers. 42 miles of EV only range, if you want it, or if you're doing stop and go and around town, and 34 miles per gallon when you're not. So just this great combo, and you don't have to search for a year. You're just going to know it's good. And then, of course, Toyota Safety Sense. Suite of safety features, which are pretty much standard.
Yes.
Used blind spot warning was optional, only a few years ago, so you'll have to look for that. But hopefully, again, I stepped out of the luxury box as you did a little bit. So, Jim, hopefully those are some cars for thought for you. As always, we thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Keep the questions. cr.org/talkingcars is those instructions. And we will see you next time.